To thank you for making Subway footlongs famous, now enjoy any regular footlong as a $5 footlong. That's right, any, including your favorites, like the savory chicken and bacon ranch. Any Subway regular footlong is just $5. Hurry in. The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
this is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
It might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
All right, we're calling it audible. This is part 2 of the Mega March Madness preview podcast. I thought this was going to be one that we also had Cousin Sal and House on, but Chad Millman gave us so much good stuff. We're just turning it into its own podcast. This is a must-listen. A lot of good stuff in here, a lot of info, and a lot of like wise guy stuff. I encourage you to listen. He loves this time of year. He's on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. ESPN's own Chad Millman. What's happening?
How you doing? I do love this time of year. It's phenomenal.
You like this more or less than Super Bowl?
A lot more.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's just, the Super Bowl is interesting for the technicalities of it and sort of the point spread moves and the over-unders and all the props, and it gets very interesting. But there's just so much action. There's so many different ways for people to play, whether it's the pools, whether it's against the spread, whether it's the in the office, it's with friends, whatever it is. I feel like it engages a lot more people in a lot of different ways.
And probably more value for the sharps because there's so many casual and dumb people deciding to throw money down left and right who have no idea what they're doing.
It's almost the complete opposite. The sharps treat this like, to them, the conference tournaments are where to play. The sharps think about the NCAA tournament like it's the end of the year. They relax. The lines are actually so much tighter because the bookmakers have so much more information. At this time of year, there's not the advantage that the guys get over the course of the year. At this time of the year, the bookmakers have it nailed down. And so the sharps find a lot less value in a lot of these games. Like, there hasn't been a ton of movement on these games in the last 12, 24 hours that they're, 12, 15 hours that they've been posted, because there hasn't been a ton of value out there. They need to wait until the public weighs in a little bit on Thursday and Friday before they start to find true value. But even then, they're not playing as much as they would play during the conference tournaments.
I've heard there's been a subtle shift where now conference championship weekend is now the most fun weekend to go to Vegas and not round one, which was always too crowded 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I haven't heard that, but I would believe it because there's so many games going on and the competition is fierce, and you're not getting those blowout games that you're going to get, in the, whether Duke plays Arkansas, Pine Bluff, or Winthrop, or whomever. The games by Friday, Saturday, Sunday are so high intense because it's either underdog teams playing for their lives to get into the tournament, or it's the two top seeds playing for pride. And either way, they're going to be playing a sort of peak level of competition. So it's either that weekend or the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, because there's just as many games Thursday, there's games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but the competition is a lot more intense. So it's a lot more fun, and sort of the atmosphere there's fewer people as well. So those are two weekends that are great weekends to go. You're right. The first weekend, it's insane there.
And I've spanned the whole time of that, because the first weekend took off, I think, probably I'm going to say 95 or 96 was when they started to get some buzz about it. Really before the internet had kind of gone, had taken it and run with it. But this was, you have to remember, before the days where you could get every game and the whole thing. You can go there and they'll have all the games and you can bet on them. Right. It was like a big deal in 1995.
Oh, for sure.
And now, now it's 2010. I can watch every game from my house. You can internet gamble if you want. It's illegal, but you can still do it. It's just, I don't think it has the same sort of impact that it did. I'll never forget going there for the first time. I think it was 97 was the first time I was there the first weekend, and just like it was classic, eyeballs popping out of my head and, oh my God, the game, what are we going to do? And now I don't think it would be the same.
Where did you watch?
That year we were at Treasure Island, the great Treasure Island. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Happening Sportsbook there. Terrible.
place that weekend is happening. You don't have anything to apologize for.
But I saw it change, though, because when we were there in 97 and 98 and 99, it was not, it wasn't crazy crowded. But by about 2000, 2001, the word was out.
Yeah, it's become one of those things that you have to go. You have to make one pilgrimage. And now I have friends who have been going for 5, 6, 7 years, and if their one chance to get away from life is to go away for that weekend, they don't care if they've got to stay up all night and start camping out to get a seat at 6 in the morning. I mean, at Caesars these days, they keep security guards on staff all night because they don't want people sleeping in the sports book to get their seats. So if you want to go to Caesars and watch at Caesars Hotel to get the tournament, you can sit there all night, but you have to stay awake. So now there's actually guys who are hiring people to go stay at Caesars for, give them $80 for the night so they can be there first thing in the morning and get their seats.
Well, what about that sports book in Palazzo?
Oh, well,
isn't that's got to be
Legacy
like the hottest
Stadium
spot, right?
Everyone wants to go to Legacy Stadium. Everyone wants to go to the M. The two things that those things have are the in-game wagering, which is sort of the big thing that a lot of people are excited to try, where you can basically be betting on every single play. The odds are going to change depending on scores, three-pointers, free throws, turnovers, practically every single play. Let's say, it's Florida BYU, and Florida, BYU opens the game minus 4.5, right? So if Florida goes on a run and opens the game with 2 3-pointers, all of a sudden BYU might only be favored by 2, and the odds will change in the middle of the game. And so people are building betting portfolios throughout the game, and they're trying to find the best action. So you're a fan of Florida when they have the ball, and you're a fan of BYU when they have the ball. I did this during the Super Bowl, and it was amazing. I mean, I bet for 3 straight hours. I made close to 100 bets. I ended up down $9 throughout the whole thing, but the intensity and the excitement is just so concentrated. It's almost dangerous.
Yeah, I would say that might be bad for me.
Well, it's bad. I mean, you have to put money into an account, so you can't bet more than what you've already put out. You can't just keep going to a window. You start out with money in an account. So if you want to go put more money in, you can do that. But it's a thrilling way to play.
You know what else is underrated about that conference championship weekend? Because if you get there early enough, let's say you went from Wednesday to Monday or whatever, you could conceivably bet on the winner of the tournament. You could have that one. Like, let's say you liked whoever the 5 seed was in the tournament, and you're getting like 7-1 odds or something. You could ride that the whole week. I mean, that would be fun.
Yeah.
I guess you could do it here with the first weekend. You could do it with the regional.
Right.
Thing. It's not quite as fun because you're not going to get.
Well, it's never going to be as fun if you're not there. I mean, that's part of the thrill, is being there and getting it down there and having that ticket. And there's sort of some pageantry involved in betting in Las Vegas that separates it from just internet gambling. So that's part of the fun of going there.
Vegas, last 3 years, obviously hasn't been as red hot as it once was. Do you feel like that first March Madness weekend is 60% of what it was, 80%?
Well, you say it's not where it was because of the economy?
Yeah.
I would say that this year it'll probably be 85 to 90% of where it was. I don't think the drop-offs have been so big in handle that we're talking 60% or even 80%. I think it's always going to be within that 85 to 90% range of where it is every year. I mean, at its peak, it was insane, but it's still a huge major draw. This is still a weekend where every hotel is going to be packed, every sports book is going to have a line, every sports book is going to open up its annex for its theaters and, have reasons to bring people in, and there's not going to be a shortage of people there. It just might be, instead of the group of guys who goes out and each guy is betting, has a bankroll of $500 to $1,000 for the weekend, he's going to have $250 to $500. So he's betting $20 a game instead of, $50 a game, that kind of thing.
It seems like people are still showing up for the big weekends in Vegas. It's the other weekends that have become a problem.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can't tell you how many times during the football season I would talk to a bookmaker, and I'd be like, how's it going? And they're like, just waiting for the economy to get better. I mean, these are, NFL, mid-season NFL weekends. So the handle was clearly not as good as it's been, but the big weekends, you're still going to, have an amazing experience there.
Right. All right. Well, let's get to the regionals.
Let's do it, man.
Got any things you're looking at? Any things you're hearing?
Well,
any sharps that a Fezzik of college hoops potentially?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, I love Alan Boston, who I sort of did the book of the odds about, 10 years ago, and I still keep in touch with. But there's certain teams that all these guys, I spoke to Teddy Covers today as well. I spoke to him this morning, and he made a very interesting point to me. All the teams that I had been thinking about as sort of the wise guy teams that I've been hearing all year, that as the season was winding down and the conference championships were starting, there were certain teams that all the wise guys loved. They loved Baylor. They loved Temple. They loved Wisconsin. They loved Texas A&M. They loved Utah State. And so all of a sudden what happened is you've got these, what Teddy Covers was saying, and he was actually having this conversation with Fezzik, they call it the bet-on games. It's where the committee doesn't do wise guys any favors because all the teams that they would like to bet on are facing each other. So you're looking at St. Mary's and Richmond, and UNLV and UNI, and UTEP and Butler, and Cornell and Temple, and Montana and New Mexico. All these teams that these guys would love to bet on if they were playing a team that was a bet against team, like Wake Forest and Texas, which is two bet against teams. And so
or Purdue, I'm betting would be another one.
Yeah, Purdue, exactly. Although a lot of guys, they feel like there's going to be value in Purdue because so many people will be betting against them, and they're still a decent team. But Clemson, Missouri, two bet against teams. Those are the games where it'd be nice if Cornell was playing Missouri and Temple was playing Clemson, because then it'd be a no-brainer of who they're going to take. But everybody loves Baylor, at least to make it to the round of 16. I think Baylor-Marquette is a very interesting potential matchup because both of those teams have been huge wise guy teams all year. Baylor has sort of risen through the ranks. All year they've been this great, not just against the spread team, but a team that is covering what their closing line is by a significant amount, by 6 or 7 points. So if their spread was, -6, they were winning the game by 12. And so to me, that's a team that I've been tracking all year because I've been following sort of how they're doing, not just against the spread, but what their number has been when the spread is closed. So I've loved them. Temple I love because I love Dunphy, and I think a lot of the wise guys love Temple because they play a sound, sort of fundamentally sound game. And when you're talking about wise guy teams, they're always going to side on the teams like Temple and Wisconsin and Marquette. They're sort of good half-court teams. They're fundamentally sound. They're predictable. Wise guys love predictable teams. So those are a lot of the elements that they're thinking about right now.
Wise guys love predictable teams.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Makes sense, right? I mean, they don't love Louisville because they don't know who's going to show up. It's an athletic team, but if they don't shoot threes well, are they going to win? Are they going to cover? What's your prognosis? Same reason why they've never loved Duke is because if Duke isn't shooting well, then they can't get a predictable outcome on their games. And so they all hate Coach K, but they love the guys who coach Butler, and they love Bo Ryan, and they love the coach for Texas A&M. Sort of, those are the guys who their systems are so sound and the players are so good at their system that they have a good feeling when they bet them of what the outcome is going to be.
Do they concentrate on solely the teams, or do they weigh in the conferences as well? As in,
conference.
I don't like the ACC. I think it's overrated, so I'm going against all those teams.
That's a huge factor. I mean, if you're looking at Missouri-Clemson, then you got two teams that are sort of similar, athletic. They didn't play that great this year. They're in the tournament mid-level. One of the first things they're looking at is conference on conference. So Missouri's playing in the Big 12. It's a much stronger conference from top to bottom than the ACC. So a lot of guys are going to use that in their rating when they're thinking about who they're going to bet. But the flip side of that is a lot of guys are going to look at that game and say, I'm staying away. I mean, they're saying the same thing about Texas and Wake Forest. I'm staying away from that game because I don't trust either of those teams. And, as we've talked about, that's the beauty of that. That's what separates the gamblers from sort of the wise guys, is the wise guys know when to pocket their bankroll and not bet on a game, so they can have more money to bet on the next game or just have money in their pocket to make more plays.
You told me that somebody, I think it was Fezzik, had a system with the coaches to stay away from, and Norv Turner was like the only playoff coach. What was that story?
Yeah, no, well, at the beginning, there was one coach there's two coaches in the NFL who have an impact when wise guys are making power ratings. This was sort of generally speaking. And one was Bill Belichick in the way he can win you games. And the one guy who got a minus in the way he can lose you games was Norv Turner. And that was sort of the one guy who, to them, coaches don't matter in the NFL. They matter a lot in college basketball.
Well, that was my next question.
Yeah.
So who are the coaches that are the Norv Turners?
Well, Coach K, they don't like. Mark Few.
Do they not like him personally, or they don't like him in general?
Well,
they don't like his system.
They don't like his style of play.
Okay.
And so they don't trust that he's going to do a good job, covering the spread.
Right.
To be honest, I mean, even though Duke has been pretty good against the spread this year, and even more so, they've been good in covering the closing number. I did all year this thing called the sweat barometer, which tested how teams did against that closing number. And so did they cover the point spread in which they were? Did they cover? How good were they against the spread in covering the spread? And Duke was actually very good all year. They were in my top 25 the entire year. It ended with BYU number 1 and Baylor number 2. Syracuse was up there. Kansas State was up there. Wisconsin was up there. All these teams were covering the spread by a significant amount of points. Duke did as well. But generally, he's a guy that nobody trusts. They believe he gets great players and doesn't do that much with them, and their system isn't that fantastic, and they shoot too many threes.
And Gonzaga's actually, that sounds a lot like Gonzaga.
Yeah, and Gonzaga is one of those teams that ever since they had that great run, which seems like it was yesterday, is now 10 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
What have they done? They're always one of those teams that are supposed to be advancing to the Sweet 16, and they almost never do, especially with Mark Few. So that's another guy they don't trust. They cannot stand the coach at Wake Forest. To a man, every single guy told me there's nothing about Wake Forest they trust.
Who's that, Odom?
Dino Guadi.
Oh, Dino, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So
isn't he like 0-4, and it's like 0-4 in the tournament? Or
yeah, it's like
Priscilla was saying some stat about him.
There's no success with that guy. So, but guys they love, Scott Drew at Baylor. This year they've loved Gary Williams. Generally, it's not always the case. They love Tom Izzo. They love Stu Morrill. This is every year I ask this question of guys. Who are the coaches you love? And they love Stu Morrill at Utah State. And that's another example of sort of a great game where it's a bet-on game is Utah State, because he's just a guy that every year they think is going to advance because he had a decent year a couple of years ago. Personally, I think this year against Texas A&M, you're getting the value. I think Texas A&M right now is 2.5 over Utah State. This is one of those where Texas A&M is coming from a huge conference. It's another one of those teams where the wise guys have loved Texas A&M all year, so it's a bet-on game. Two teams that you would like to bet on if they were playing somebody else. I would take Texas A&M to advance in this game, and I'd take them to cover the spread because I feel like they're more athletic, and at the end of the day, conference on conference, Big 12 is better than where Utah State is playing.
How is the Georgia Tech coach not on that coaches to stay away from list? He's got to be on that list.
He wasn't on the list, but to me, they're an interesting team because I feel like they've actually been, for the first half of the year, they were phenomenal against the spread. And they were one of those teams where they weren't just covering the spread, but they were covering it by a significant amount. And I think he's one of those guys, he feels to me like he's a flow coach. You know how there are flow players who get into a rhythm and sort of feel it? And to me, he's the exact same thing. And that'd be a team that in the first round I'd be nervous about.
I did a March Madness there a couple of years ago, and their offense was so bad that I called it the clogged toilet offense, and all of their fans were like, thank you, somebody finally mentioned how bad this guy is. I've been on watch with him ever since.
Well, I've also read that he doesn't read the paper in Atlanta because he's so mad about how they've treated him.
Oh. Well, Rick Barnes is another one to me. I'll never forgive him for not even getting Kevin Durant to I don't even think he got him to the Sweet 16. How does that happen?
Well,
and he had DJ Augustine.
I know. What's amazing is, the magazine just did this story about Texas, and he was in there saying, I'm not concerned about winning a national title. I want to get these guys to the NBA. And to me, even though he said, I wasn't taken out of context, that's the quote that I said, I'm like, what are you thinking there?
That is a little weird. Do you think there's a Duke backlash in terms of people betting against Duke just because it's so much fun when they lose?
I don't think anyone would bet against Duke in the first round. The wise guys would. I mean, I remember last year, Duke Belmont, every single wise guy saw that spread, and they're like, I am taking Belmont I'm betting the house on Belmont because everyone knew Belmont was good. The spread was 20-something points, and they hate Duke. That's a perfect example of them hating Duke. They had all their money on Belmont, and that game ended up like a 1-point game or something like that.
Yeah.
I think everybody bets Duke in the first round who doesn't know anything, and as it gets further along, they start to bet against Duke. There is that backlash, but that's only when Duke is starting to play teams that people think can give them a hard time. I don't think anyone knows anything about, Arkansas Pine Bluff or Winthrop at this point. So any square is going to take, Duke in that game. The wise guys, they'd probably stay away. Most of them, you give them a 20-point spread, a lot of them are going to stay away. They don't find the value in that, and it's too unpredictable. So a team could be winning by 20 points at halftime and then coast the rest of the way, and it ends up being a free throw contest, and they lose by 1 point. And so a lot of guys, they don't bother with the 1-16 and the 2-15 games.
Would you say there's a little bandwagon-y to if somebody like, say, Evan Turner this year, where the general public's like, oh, Evan Turner, he's good.
Absolutely.
I got them going. Do the wise guys watch out for, bandwagon backlash for a really good player?
Oh, of course. I mean, they're going to pay attention to Ohio State and see what happens as the game gets close, because what the books have to look out for is exactly what you're talking about, bandwagon, Evan Turner bandwagon. So what's going to happen is, the game gets close, and all these people are remembering Evan Turner had this great Big Ten tournament. He saved the game a couple times. He put it into overtime against Illinois. He's the reason they won. They're going to be thinking, I'm going to bet on Ohio State because that's the guy they know and that's the team they know. And so the bookmakers have to be wary that all this money is going to come in Ohio State. When do they move the number? Because if they move it too much or too early, then they're going to get heavy from wise guy money, and that's just as bad for them. So, of course, the wise guys are looking out for all those opportunities. At this point, wise guys haven't made a ton of plays yet because the lines haven't been up that long. A lot of places, even going into this morning, didn't have their point spreads up. And so they want to see sort of opportunities to middle. If someone opens up a line that's a little bit off from where someone else opens up a line, and they're waiting to see what some of the public does, to see where some of the opportunity comes up.
Would you say the three public, quote-unquote, teams this year are Kansas, Kentucky, and Ohio State? Anybody else?
Well, Duke for sure. I mean, Duke is always going to be a public team.
Duke public for people betting on them?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. For sure.
Oh, I would have thought everybody would bet against Duke just because it's so much fun to root against them.
That not everybody who bets on these games and goes to Vegas is as hardcore college hoops fans. They just know the Duke name, and they're going out to Vegas to have a good time, so they're going to bet on Duke because that's what they know. And
the brand. So, and Baylor's the opposite. You'd see Baylor, and you'd be like, Baylor?
Why would I bet on Baylor?
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, public is all brand betting. That's all it is. And so that's why Kentucky and Kansas and Duke, those are always going to be the teams that are getting the most money. Those are public teams. They're the Steelers and the Cowboys and the Packers of college basketball.
Do the Sharps just go game to game, or do they actually think about regional winners, or I love somebody to win the whole thing at 15-1, stuff like that?
Oh, yeah, they'll play futures for sure. But, right now they're thinking game to game.
More than the other way.
They're more than futures for sure. I mean, they did their futures bets, back in, October, November. They were thinking harder about it back then. Right now, it's all game to game. But again, this is almost Candyland time for them. This isn't when they're doing their hardcore gambling because they've been doing it all year. They just went through finals with the conference tournament. So with the NCAA tournament, I remember 10 years ago when I did the book and Boston was betting, $20,000 a game, I went out to his house for the NCAA tournament, and he had flown in, barbecue packed in dry ice because he was having 25 people over to watch the tournament. He's never going to do that on a Saturday during the regular season. He's going to be in his house by himself with a pencil and his notebook, and he's going to be tracking the games. And, during the NCAA tournament, it's fun, it's over, it's lighter, it's more of a playful, get a little sweat going.
Chad, we've reached the point of the podcast where we have to do a PSA, a public service announcement.
Let's do it.
Explain to everybody why you shouldn't tease any 2 March Madness games over the next 3 weeks.
Teasing March Madness games, because there's so much that can go wrong in March Madness. It's mind-boggling why you would even consider it. That's all you have to say. Don't do it. Just don't do it. It's like,
not even don't do it, but really check yourself into a mental hospital if you tease 2 March Madness games.
If you need to tease March Madness games, then you've got a teasing problem.
What would somebody like Fezzix or Teddy Covers say if you told them, hey, what do you think of this tease I have going in round 1?
I have an off-color comment I could say, but I think they'd probably hang up the phone on me and never return my call.
Now, the cousin of that, a little more defensible slightly, but I still think indefensible, parlaying 2 money lines.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been getting a lot of questions about parlays at this point, and my answer is to stay away. Go find individual games that you think are of good value, because the tournament is so unpredictable that parlaying any of these games, you're gonna win that first game, and then you're gonna sweat that second game so bad, and you're gonna be so miserable. It's gonna take all the joy out of it. Play individual games, play your brackets. Don't do parlays. Don't do anything where you're doubling up. It's just not worth it. There's too much excitement in the tournament built into the individual games to worry about having a bet like a parlay where it's just going to make you twice as uncomfortable.
And just to reiterate this one more time to our young aspiring gamblers at home, the Sharps do not parlay or tease.
Never. Well, they'll parlay during the NFL season for sure, but they won't.
But not college hoops.
No.
Never, ever, not once.
Speaking of never, and you know what else? Speaking of young gamblers, I got an email from a 12-year-old the other day.
Oh, I'm proud of him. What did he say?
He was a big Wisconsin fan, and he wanted to know, he knows that I'm a big Wisconsin fan, so he wanted to know my thoughts on Wisconsin in the tournament and why I thought that they were underachieving against high-ranking teams. No, against low-ranking teams, but doing well against high-ranking teams.
Huh.
I thought it was a very astute observation. I'm a little worried that he's 12 and.
I love him. I want to legally adopt him. And just for one more, just to bang home the PSA element of the podcast, what would the Sharps say if you called and said you had a great 16 tees going and you've hit 4 of the first 6? You're really excited.
They don't even. If I called them already with a tease and a parlay question, they probably would have not even pick up the phone. To be like, I used to like this guy. Now he's a loser. I wish he would lose my number.
All right, so there you go. The lesson: don't parlay and don't tease. Just go game to game, bang them.
Game, enjoy.
Yeah. So who is in your final 4?
All season. I started saying this a long time ago, and I'm going to stick with it. I said in January I thought Syracuse was going to win the national title. And I'll say this, I had seen maybe 2 Syracuse games up to that point. The only reason I said it is because they had been consistently dominating in the sweat barometer that I was doing, and they were consistently dominating against the spread. So I had Syracuse. I had Wisconsin, Kansas State, and Kansas.
Isn't Syracuse and Kansas State in the same bracket?
Well, that was what I had like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I got you.
So I haven't, let me look at my bracket. I'll look at my bracket, and I'll tell you.
So so you got to pick somebody out of that Kansas, Ohio State, Georgetown, Maryland,
right.
Michigan
I'm
State.
still going to pick Kansas.
So Kentucky?
Sure. I'm still going to pick Syracuse for sure.
It's pretty boring so far, Chad.
I know. I love Baylor. I really do.
God, we're still like Baylor, too. I'm going to have to – I didn't watch them once this year. I'm not ashamed to admit it.
I love Baylor. And I'm going to stick with Wisconsin. I have no reason not to. I think Wisconsin can beat Kentucky. I just think Bo Ryan is great. I love Bo Ryan. And if you need some wild cards, why not? Like 4 isn't such an outrageous upset to get to the Final Four. And, I think that's a good one, and I like Baylor.
Round 1 lock of the week?
Baylor.
Baylor over Sam Houston? Interesting. Round one underdog lock of the week?
That's a tougher one.
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ask you a tough question.
Why are you asking me such hard questions? Let's go with... Let's see. I would say, can I can I take one to cover, or does it have to be to win? Because I can see Murray State easily covering against Vanderbilt.
All right, so there's your cover. Who's your win?
Let's go with UTEP over Butler.
Interesting.
It's a hard one because Butler is, again, one of those teams that I love and that is a wise guy team, but I feel like UTEP has been strong. Except for that last game, they've had a good year, and they could get hot and, disrupt that Butler team.
Who beats Duke?
Who will beat Duke? Arkansas
Villanova?
Pine Bluff?
Villanova?
A&M.
Oh, A&M. That could be round. Yeah,
that's going to be
round
what is
3.
That? Yeah, A&M.
Oh God, I hope that happens.
Yeah.
Why is it so fun to hate Duke?
It goes back to Wojo.
You know what's funny is that people root for the Gonzaga for the same reasons they hate Duke.
I know.
Duke is basically Gonzaga with a coach that just annoys us more for whatever reason.
Yeah,
but it's basically
right.
the same principles, same types of athletes, same system, same live or die by outside shooting, and yet we hate Duke and we love Gonzaga.
You know why? Because Duke, at the end of the day, is a smug private school, and Gonzaga has a scrappiness that sort of that sticks to it that Duke doesn't have, and Duke will never have, because Duke, everybody there has an advantage. And so when, 10, 12 years ago, Wojo was pounding the floor and, looking nasty, everyone is going to remember that, and it's going to be passed down from generation to generation.
All right. Did we cover everything?
Who do you have?
I don't know. I haven't decided. That's why I'm talking to all these people who actually know what they're talking about. Who does Teddy Covers have?
He didn't tell me his Final Four, actually. I don't think he's even thought about it yet. I think these guys, it's Monday morning. They're all going through the brackets right now. Not everybody has their point spreads up, so they're still thinking about who's going to put what up and where can I find an opportunity. But I will say he loves Temple. Loves Temple.
It's so funny because I didn't really watch them in full until this weekend, and I really like them.
They're really good. Fran Dunphy is such a good coach.
Yeah, it would be fun to have Temple be good again, too.
Temple's going to play Wisconsin in the second round.
Oh, that's a bet on, as you'd call it.
It's a bet on game.
See, I never had a phrase for that game, and now I do. The bet on game. I hate the bet on games. That always happens to me every tournament. The two teams that I like playing each other.
I hate the bet on games. Marquette, New Mexico could also be a bet on game in the second round there, in the East region. That East region is killer because it has Texas Wake Forest is bet against, Temple Cornell is bet on, Marquette Washington is a tough game because Washington, I think, if you talk to Teddy Covers, he'll tell you that Pac-10 is undervalued because of an East Coast bias. New Mexico, Montana is also not that easy of a game.
Hold on. You know what? You have 5 minutes, right?
Yeah, sure.
Let's just go through this. Midwest, Kansas Lehigh is a bet off.
Yeah, you stay away from it. The spread's going to be so high, you don't want to. It's too high.
UNLV, Northern Iowa, bet off.
That is a bet on game. Meaning
who's the bet on team?
Two teams that the wise guys would love to bet on.
Oh, both of them?
Yeah.
Michigan State, New Mexico State.
I think you could take Michigan State in that game.
Maryland, Houston?
I think you could take Maryland in that game. I'm talking against the spread.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I like this bet on, bet off concept.
Yeah. This is a bet game. Okay? So these are games you can bet.
So they bet Maryland saying that Houston's not good, they shouldn't be in there, and Maryland they like.
Yep.
Tennessee, San Diego State?
Bet.
So they would bet Tennessee or San Diego State?
San Diego State is a tough game, but I think Tennessee, to me, that's a conference-on-conference game. Like, if you can't decide, go to the conferences. Tennessee was good this year. I think the spread was low. It was something like 2.5, if I'm not mistaken, and which is just really low. And so I'd take Tennessee in that game.
Georgetown, Ohio?
Bet it.
Georgetown?
Yeah, probably.
Oklahoma State, Georgia Tech.
Stay away. Those are two bet against teams to me.
Two weird coaches.
Yeah.
Ohio State, UC Santa Barbara. Too high of a line.
Yeah, it's probably too high of a line. Go ahead.
Syracuse, Vermont, same thing.
Yep.
Gonzaga, Florida State.
I would take Florida State in this game.
It's a bet on for them, you think?
Yeah. I would bet this game.
Butler, Texas, El Paso.
This is a bet on game. This is a game that a lot of guys are going to have a hard time betting.
Because they like both teams.
Because they like both teams a lot.
Vandy, Murray State.
This is a bet game, but I would take Murray State.
Xavier, Minnesota.
Here's why I would take Murray State, by the way, because a lot of guys I know, I spoke to a consultant this morning named Pete Corner, who runs a place called the Sports Club, and they were talking about Murray State at +5, and I think it opened at 9, and now it's at 10. So there are guys whose job it is to make these lines who thought this could be a 5-point game, and so if you're getting, you're getting it at 10 right now.
I mean, if you have a 4-13 game and it's a line that's less than 5, the NCAA has just failed. That's an abject failure by them.
Exactly. Well, that's why they put it at 10. Or that's why they sent it out at 9, because what Pete said to me, the perception is going to be, how could you have, Vanderbilt at 5 when the perception is going to be this is a huge team from a big conference against a team not a lot of people know.
Xavier, Minnesota.
That's a bet game, and I would play Xavier.
Pittsburgh, Oakland. It's a stay away.
Yeah.
BYU, Florida. We all like BYU.
Yes.
They're a bet-on team, I'm guessing. Two good guards who could shoot threes. I like them.
They were a huge sweat barometer team.
KSU, North Texas.
I have to see what the number is right now.
Probably a stay away.
It's probably a stay away.
Same for Kentucky, East Tennessee State. Texas, Wake Forest. They don't like either of these coaches. That's a bet off.
A huge bet against game. That is a huge bet against game.
Followed by the best bet on game of round 1, Temple Cornell, which is almost a stay away because we like these teams so much.
Yes.
Wisconsin, Wofford.
I'd bet it. I'd take Wisconsin.
Marquette, Washington.
I had a long talk with Teddy Covers about this game earlier today, and we went back and forth because Marquette has been one of those teams that is a huge wise guy team all year, and he was actually if he was going to play, if I put a gun to his head, and he was, he wasn't sure he was going to play, but if he was going to play Washington, which I think was a 1-point underdog.
That fails a lot of the tests that we've covered because they're a bad conference and Marquette is a bet-on team.
I know, but sometimes you got to look at the value, and he's playing what he thinks the value is.
Mm-hmm. New Mexico, Montana.
It's another game where it's a bet-on game for a lot of guys.
For which team? New Mexico.
Well, a bet-on games means it's two teams that they both would like to bet on. So a lot of guys are going to have a hard time with that game.
Clemson, Missouri.
Bet against, meaning there's two teams they would like to bet against.
West Virginia, Morgan State.
Let's just look at the number for a second, because if that, that's one of those games where nobody knows Morgan State. 17.5. I'd stay away from that game.
I think finally. Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm going to say I'd take West Virginia.
It took 3 regionals, but I think I finally figured out how to react when you say it's a bet-on game. We'll test it out in this last one.
Good. I'm glad. By the time we're done, we should be all set.
Duke play-in winner. Stay away.
Stay away.
California, Louisville.
So many guys I know have said they can't wait to take California in this game.
Okay. Texas A&M, Utah State.
Bet on game.
My reaction is no reaction because you said it was a bet on game.
Bet on game.
Purdue, Siena.
All right, let's be smart about this, because let's look at the line right now, because this could be one of those games where it starts to get, right now it's 3.5 for Purdue. It's a game that I think you want to pay attention to. If all of a sudden Siena starts getting all this money because everyone is saying how Purdue is in bad shape because they don't have Robbie Hummel, and it's down to 2, then I think you want to start playing Purdue. It's still a team that is a great Big Ten team. So I think you want to think about that.
And a little Ewing theory with Robbie Hummel, maybe.
Maybe.
Notre Dame, Old Dominion. Don't break Joe Meade's heart here.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now that a lot of guys I know are looking to play Notre Dame, and that the line for this game has already moved up. I think it opened at 2, and it's starting to go higher.
Joe.
Yes.
You excited?
I'm excited.
Chad thinks that's a bet Notre Dame game.
So do I.
Baylor, Sam Houston, bet Baylor.
Bet Baylor.
Richmond, St. Mary's.
Bet on game.
Damn, I like St. Mary's. That's one of my teams.
Then take them. Take a flyer.
I like their center.
Go for it.
Omar Sandman or whatever his name is. I like that guy. Villanova, Robert Morris, our last game.
Yeah, stay away.
All right.
But here, I have to amend something.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about Vanderbilt Murray State, and I incorrectly said that they were at 10. I meant Pittsburgh Oakland was at opened at 9, moved up to 10. Vanderbilt at 3.5 with Murray State. I meant Pittsburgh Oakland.
Okay. Fair enough. I've been peppering you for 40 minutes.
Yeah, and when I was talking to Pete this morning, he was saying that they thought about making that Pittsburgh Oakland game 5, and his thinking was the perception is going to be how could Pittsburgh not be a double-digit favorite on this team. So, I don't want people emailing me and saying you're an idiot, at least more than they normally do.
Okay, but still, don't feel free to do that to Chad anyway.
Yeah, right.
Chad Millman, come back next Monday.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
We'll do it again. Thanks.
Take care.
That concludes part 2 of the Mega March Madness preview podcast. Part 3 tomorrow. Cousin Sal and House can talk about all kinds of stupid betting theories and pools and also we're going to talk about the BS Report March Madness pool, which you can check out. You can either search for it, BS Report and the Tourney Challenge, or go to my Twitter page, SportsGuy33, and I'll have the link there. Until tomorrow.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.
To thank you for making Subway footlongs famous. Now enjoy any regular footlong as a $5 footlong. That's right, any, including your favorites like the savory chicken, bacon, and ranch. Any Subway regular footlong is just $5. Hurry in.